A struggling single dad helped a woman fix her Mustang. She secretly owned $1 billion empire. They said kindness has a way of coming back around, but struggling single father Dean Thompson never imagined how spectacularly it would return to him. One ordinary afternoon, he stopped to help a stranded motorist whose classic Mustang refused to start. Little did he know that under that car's hood lay the key to a life-altering transformation. The owner? An unassuming woman with a guarded smile, Jennifer Robinson. Far from ordinary, she was secretly the billionaire owner of a global empire. Their fateful roadside meeting set into motion a riveting tale of second chances, hidden identities, and the power of compassion. Dean Thompson was not a man who rested easily. Every dawn, as the first rays of sun peeked through the thin, worn curtains of his modest two-bedroom apartment in a small Texan town called Riverdale, he awoke with purpose. In many ways, he had no choice. Ever since his wife, Karen, passed away in a tragic car accident 3 years prior, life had become a daily challenge, balancing fatherhood for his 6-year-old daughter, Mia, with the relentless pursuit of enough money to keep food on the table and hope in their hearts. His routine was as unremarkable as it was grueling. He'd rouse Mia from her tiny bed, help her with a bowl of cereal, often substituting milk with water. When money ran out, then drive her to the local elementary school on his battered old pickup. After that, he'd scour the town for odd jobs. Sometimes he fixed fences on ranches outside Riverdale. Other times, he repaired leaky roofs or patched crumbling driveways. The pay was never high, but it kept them afloat. What little free time he had, Dean spent flipping through old car manuals he'd collected since his teenage years, back when restoring classic automobiles was his dream. Life had derailed him from those ambitions, but his skilled hands remained adept at turning wrenches. If a friend's car started smoking, or if someone had trouble changing a spark plug, Dean would step up without question. He wasn't a certified mechanic, but he could tinker until the engine purred again. The townsfolk loved his kind heart and never demanded credentials when he worked his magic on their vehicles. One sweltering afternoon, with scorching sun overhead and the clang of cicadas ringing in the air, Dean spotted a 1967 Mustang parked on the side of a dusty road just off Highway 18. The hood was propped open, steam rising in ominous curls, and a frustrated figure in a crisp white blouse leaned over the engine bay. The car was a beauty even in its overheated state. Dean instantly recognized the lines of a classic. Despite his own full plate, he had roofing materials in his truck, ready for a job he couldn't drive by without helping. He pulled over, his boots crunching the gravel as he approached. "Need any help?" he asked, kindly but warily. He always worried about how his presence might be perceived by strangers. After all, a tall man in oil-stained jeans might look intimidating to some. But the woman glanced up with desperation in her eyes, exhaled and nodded. "Yes, please," she said, relief evident in her voice. "It's overheating, and I'm late for an appointment." She extended her hand. "I'm Jennifer Robinson." They shook hands, the formal nature of her introduction clashing slightly with the scorching Texas heat and the bleached expanse of roadside gravel. Dean introduced himself, explained he wasn't a professional mechanic but loved working on cars, and offered to see what he could do. He rummaged through the trunk of his old pickup, searching for tools. As he lifted the Mustang's hood, a wave of hot, acrid air blasted into his face. The radiator hose was worn, fluid trickled from a hairline crack. It was an easy enough fix, so long as he had a spare hose. "Your hose is shot," Dean remarked, wiping sweat from his brow. "I might have a spare in my truck. If it fits, we can get you back on the road." She watched him with curious eyes. Her posture was tense, and her manner of speech was direct, almost clipped, but not unkind. Dean sensed she was used to giving orders, or at least being in control of her environment. That day, though, the power was all in the tools he wielded. He replaced the hose, poured in some coolant he kept for emergencies, and asked her to start the engine. It roared to life on the first try. The grin that broke across Jennifer's face was pure gratitude. "Thank you," she exclaimed, a bit breathless. "How much do I owe you?" Dean shrugged. "Nothing. Just glad I could help." Their eyes met, and in that moment something intangible passed between them, a sense of mutual respect. Jennifer insisted on giving Dean her business card, telling him that if he ever needed anything, he should call. Dean only smiled politely, tucking it into his pocket without really expecting to use it. After all, she was just another traveler passing through, right? He was wrong. This meeting marked the beginning of a life-altering journey. Later that evening, as Dean settled into his sagging armchair, his daughter Mia climbed onto his lap, hugging him tightly. She giggled when she noticed the grease smudges on his shirt and teased him for always coming home covered in car grime. There was tenderness in the familiarity of this routine. Mia was the light of Dean's life, the reason he kept going through every hardship. He reached into his pocket, fishing out a rumpled piece of paper, Jennifer's business card. He squinted at it under the dull lamp. It read, "Jennifer Robinson, CEO, Trevorton Holdings." A phone number and an email followed. Trevorton Holdings, Dean murmured. The name stirred a vague memory. Maybe he'd heard it on the news. After all, they owned multiple businesses spanning tech, real estate, and even philanthropic ventures. But what were the odds that the woman he'd helped was actually the big boss? It seemed too outlandish, but there it was, printed in crisp black ink. He tossed it aside, focusing on Mia's bedtime. "Daddy, can we have pancakes for breakfast?" she asked, eyes shining. Dean ruffled her hair. "Sure thing, Peanut, as long as I can find the pancake mix," she squealed in delight. The next morning, after Dean dropped Mia off at school, he headed to a roofing site. He spent the day hauling shingles under a blazing sun, sweat stinging his eyes. At noon, he stole a moment of shade to guzzle water. Through the haze of exhaustion, he realized his phone was vibrating with a call from a number he didn't recognize. Initially, he contemplated ignoring its spam, most likely, but a sudden intuition urged him to answer. "Hello?" he said. "Hello, Dean? This is Jennifer Robinson." She'd actually called him. "It's all right," Dean said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Everything okay with your Mustang?" "Oh, it's running beautifully," she answered. "Why? Well, I wanted to thank you properly. You saved me a fortune. That engine fix was crucial, and I was hoping." A pause, one that felt heavy. "I was hoping I could repay you somehow. Maybe treat you to dinner, or if you have a family." Dean gently cut her off, embarrassed. "I appreciate the thought, ma'am, but really, you don't owe me anything. I'm in Riverdale for a few more days for a personal project, and I'd really like to meet your daughter. I hear from your local mechanic, Tommy, is it, that you have a beautiful little girl?" "We're free tonight for dinner, actually." They agreed to meet at Rosie's Diner, a beloved local spot known for hearty meals and friendly faces. That evening, Dean and Mia slid into a booth by the window. Mia fidgeted with a coloring book, excited to meet a friend of her dad's. She wore her best pink dress, still a bit large from a thrift store find. Dean tried to brush her hair neatly, aware of every slight imperfection, wishing he could offer his daughter more. Jennifer entered the diner, the bell chiming as she pushed open the door. She was dressed simply in jeans and a blouse. Yet, there was an air of quiet authority about her. Mia's eyes lit up, and Jennifer smiled, bending down to shake the little girl's hand as if she were greeting a dignitary. The move instantly won Mia over. They talked over warm plates of chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes. Jennifer listened intently as Dean spoke about losing his wife and raising Mia alone. He talked about the odd jobs he took, the frugality they practiced, and the small joys they found in simpler pleasures like Sunday picnics by the river or hunting for flowers behind the school field. Jennifer shared that she was in town for a real estate evaluation. She kept the details vague, as though she didn't want to burden them with corporate talk. Instead, she focused on Mia's favorite cartoon shows, praising her for her neat coloring. Before they parted ways, Jennifer insisted on picking up the tab. When Dean thanked her, she only said, "It's the least I can do." On their way out, Mia tugged at Dean's sleeve. "She's really nice," she whispered, with that disarming, childlike sense of wonder. Dean couldn't help but agree. What he didn't know was that Jennifer Robinson's presence in Riverdale was the tip of an iceberg, an empire so vast that helping fix her Mustang was akin to stumbling across a hidden treasure chest. She seemed more interested in listening to stories about Riverdale's folks, from Old Man Harrison's run-down orchard to Susie's horse rescue shelter. Despite her unassuming manner, rumors began to swirl. A woman driving a classic Mustang, wearing elegant designer shoes, and staying at Riverdale's only upscale hotel was bound to spark talk. Some residents guessed she was an heiress. Others believed she was a Hollywood producer scouting the area for a film. Autumn was rolling in, and with it came colder nights. Their old apartment's heating barely functioned, prompting nasty drafts in Mia's bedroom. One night, Mia woke up coughing, her cheeks flushed from the chill. Dean spent hours crouched by the dusty vent, trying to jerry-rig a solution. Frustration gnawed at him. "Dean, I hate to bother you, but I'm stranded again. Not the Mustang this time. My rental SUV broke down near the old covered bridge outside town. Can you help?" Dean dropped everything. He found Jennifer standing by a sleek, black SUV, perplexed by another mechanical hiccup. A glance under the hood revealed a faulty, serpentine belt. Dean couldn't help but smirk. "Cars just don't like you very much, do they?" Jennifer laughed, but there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. "You might be right." As he worked on the belt, they fell into easy conversation. She asked him about his aspirations. Did he ever dream of running his own garage or working at a professional mechanic's shop? Dean shrugged, focusing on the belt tensioner. "A long time ago, I wanted to open my own classic car restoration business, but life got in the way. Karen got pregnant with Mia. Then we bought a house we could barely afford. I was working 2 jobs. She was finishing her degree. Then she passed, and I had to sell the house. I had to let that dream go." Jennifer was silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on him. "But if you had the chance to do it, would you?" "Of course," he said quickly, then realized how fervent he sounded. He cleared his throat. "You never lose that spark, you know." Jennifer nodded. Something in her demeanor shifted, as though a plan was taking form in her mind. She placed her hand gently on Dean's arm. "I believe we're all meant for something. Sometimes it just takes the right circumstances to make it happen." He couldn't decipher the hint in her words, nor the veiled determination in her eyes. He finished the repair, told her she was good to go, and tried not to read too much into the gentle hand that lingered on his sleeve. By then, Dean saw that Jennifer had an unusual sense of empathy, a depth that hinted at her own struggles. But he never pried, never asked about her business, or what exactly Treverton Holdings did. After all, she was a friend now, and prying felt wrong. What he didn't realize was that Jennifer had been quietly investigating his background, not out of malice or suspicion, but out of genuine concern and a growing resolve to help him in ways he couldn't possibly fathom. As word traveled, curiosity grew among Riverdale's residents. One afternoon, the local gossip mill went into overdrive when Jennifer Robinson was spotted stepping out of the county courthouse. Some folks assumed she was dealing with real estate permits, or maybe even lawsuits. Dean tried to dismiss the speculation. It wasn't his place to pry, but he couldn't help feeling a tad uneasy. One day, while Dean picked Mia up from school, he noticed a sleek black sedan parked across the street. Leaning against it was a man in a sharp suit, wearing sunglasses and holding a leather briefcase. Dean couldn't help but stare. The man caught his eye, gave him a curt nod, then disappeared into the car. It was unusual to see such a corporate type in small-town Riverdale. A fleeting sense of anxiety pricked Dean's mind. His worries temporarily subsided when Mia chirped from the back seat, "Daddy, can we go to the playground?" Her bright smile melted his concerns. "Sure, sweetheart," he replied. They headed to the small playground by the river, where Mia ran around, chasing friends and squealing with delight on the swings. Dean watched her, heart full of pride yet weighed down by financial worries that never entirely went away. Later, as they strolled along the riverbank, Jennifer appeared, as if out of thin air. She wore casual attire, but carried the same air of graceful composure. She bent down to greet Mia, pulling out a small plush toy from her purse, a tiny stuffed pony. Mia's face lit up, hugging it tightly. "You spoil her," Dean remarked, trying to sound casual. Jennifer smiled softly. "Mia deserves all the happiness in the world." They walked along the riverside path, golden sunlight filtering through the trees. Eventually, Mia ran ahead, enthralled by a bright blue butterfly. Seizing the moment, Jennifer turned to Dean. "I know it's none of my business, but is everything all right financially? I know that's a personal question." Dean stopped her with a raised hand, though not rudely. "I get by. It's not easy, but Mia and I manage. I don't want to burden you with my problems." Jennifer looked conflicted, an unreadable emotion flickering across her face. Sometimes, accepting a little help isn't a burden. It can be an opportunity. Dean considered her words. He thought about the drafty apartment, the meager savings, the repairs that never got done, and how he'd had to cancel MIA's ballet lessons because they couldn't afford them anymore. But pride was a powerful thing. "I appreciate it, but I'm okay for now," he said carefully. Jennifer let it drop, but something in her eyes told him that this conversation was far from over. The following day, Dean was called for an unexpected carpentry job at the outskirts of Riverdale. He arrived at an under-construction building, a future community center, rumored to be funded by a mysterious out-of-town investor. His job was to help lay down flooring and fix some structural issues. To his astonishment, he spotted that same black sedan from before. The man in the suit was pacing around, talking animatedly on his phone. Dean's surprise only grew when Jennifer walked out of the building, accompanied by the suited man. She spotted Dean, her expression a mix of guilt and resolution. The man turned, and Dean recognized him as the one who'd nodded at him near the school. Jennifer made the introductions. "Dean, this is Marshall Smith. He's, well, my head of legal affairs at Treverton Holdings." "Head of legal affairs?" Dean blinked, the gears in his mind turning. Jennifer was no mere CEO of a small company. She had an entire corporate infrastructure behind her. His heart rate spiked. He suddenly felt out of place, as though he'd stumbled into a boardroom meeting in his worn-out jeans and muddy boots. Jennifer explained that Treverton Holdings was funding the community center as part of a philanthropic project. Marshall was there to finalize contracts with local contractors. Dean felt a swirl of emotions. Why hadn't she mentioned it before? But then, she never lied, she just withheld certain details. Maybe she was testing the waters, seeing if small-town folks would treat her differently if they knew her true status. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Dean, I'm sorry if this feels like I've been hiding things from you. There are reasons I keep a low profile, especially in places like this. But please know that everything I've done here, the community center, the outreach, it's genuine." Dean forced a smile. "I believe you," he managed to say, though his mind was racing with confusion and curiosity. She was a multi-millionaire, maybe even more. So why was she driving around alone, needing his help with a Mustang? As if reading his thoughts, she added, "I like to be hands-on, especially with my personal projects. Riverdale has a special meaning for me." Dean didn't press, but he realized this was the second time he'd glimpsed Jennifer's true world, one of lawyers, big money, and high stakes. He felt like a bystander on the edge of a stage production, peering behind the curtain at sets and props he wasn't meant to see. The revelation about Jennifer weighed heavily on Dean's mind. He wrestled with a growing suspicion that she had more plans for him than she let on. A part of him wondered if she pitied him, the single dad with an ailing bank account, or if there was some deeper reason. Days trickled into weeks. Mia became increasingly fond of Jennifer, who seemed to have a knack for brightening the child's day, treating her to ice cream or teaching her simple baking recipes. On one rainy afternoon, Jennifer stopped by Dean's apartment unannounced, offering to help with groceries. Dean, uncomfortable with handouts, politely refused at first. But when he saw how determined she was and how much Mia's eyes sparkled at the promise of fresh fruit, he relented. Over tea in his cramped living room, Jennifer studied a framed photo of Karen, Dean's late wife. She delicately asked about her. Dean recounted memories: Karen's kindness, her ambition to become a teacher, her infectious laugh. A familiar sadness pinched his heart. Jennifer listened intently, her eyes reflecting genuine empathy. In that moment, Dean saw something raw in Jennifer's expression, a quiet sorrow, maybe regret. "I lost someone too," she confessed softly, though she offered no details. Dean resisted the urge to pry, but the vulnerability in her voice spoke volumes. They left the topic at that, a silent understanding passing between them. Later that evening, after Jennifer departed, Dean mulled over everything. Was she lonely beneath her corporate success? Why did she connect so deeply with Mia? He sensed a maternal warmth in her gestures, a protective streak that suggested something personal at stake. At the same time, changes began to ripple across Riverdale. The nearly abandoned old lumber mill was suddenly purchased by Trevorton Holdings, prompting excitement about job opportunities. Rumor had it that the community center construction project was going to expand, complete with a youth sports complex and adult education classrooms. The entire town buzzed with anticipation and with speculation about Jennifer's identity. At last, the day arrived when Jennifer unveiled her philanthropic plans to the town council. At a public meeting in the dusty old municipal hall, she stood at the podium, formally announcing her intention to invest in the community. She spelled out expansions, training programs, and alliances with local businesses to boost employment. People applauded her generosity. Some were skeptical, but most welcomed the wave of potential progress. Standing in the back, Dean felt a swirl of pride and confusion. Here was the woman he first met on a roadside, helpless with a broken-down Mustang, now addressing the entire town as a corporate magnate. Strangely enough, she glanced at him before stepping down from the podium, a small, private smile on her lips. The gesture felt intimate and reassuring. That night, Dean got a message from Jennifer, asking him to meet her at the community center construction site after hours. The text was brief. "Need your input on something important." Conflicted but intrigued, Dean put Mia to bed, arranged for a neighbor to keep an ear out, and drove to the quiet lot where steel beams and half-erected walls loomed under portable floodlights. Jennifer was waiting near a large blueprint spread across a wooden table. The night air was cool, the moon a faint silver sliver overhead. She greeted him with that same guarded smile. "I want your honest opinion," she said, tapping the blueprint. I'm planning to add a workshop space here somewhere to teach vocational skills, maybe auto repair. It could be a place for at-risk youth to learn hands-on trades. Dean's heart skipped. He traced the lines on the blueprint, imagining a fully equipped auto garage, a classroom, a dream that he once had. "That's incredible," he said, voice husky with emotion. "This town needs it. You can teach kids real skills, open up possibilities." She watched him carefully. "Would you be interested in helping run it?" It was the question Dean never dared to let himself consider. Running a workshop, teaching auto repair to kids who might not otherwise get a chance. Sharing his passion, something that had lain dormant, overshadowed by grief and responsibility. His throat tightened. "You're serious?" Jennifer nodded, unwavering. "Yes, I'd pay you a proper salary, enough to give Mia whatever she needs. But more than that, I believe this could help you reclaim the dream you thought you lost." His mind whirled with questions. Could he really do it? Could he manage day-to-day tasks, handle the finances, ensure he didn't fail again? But the promise was there, beckoning. Anxiety and excitement intermingled in his chest. Finally he said, "I'd be honored and terrified, but yes." Jennifer exhaled as though she'd been holding her breath. She extended her hand, and they shook. That simple act sealed a pact that would change Dean's life in ways neither of them could fully anticipate. For the next month, Dean found himself pulled into a whirlwind of preparation for the new workshop. Under Jennifer's guidance, and with financial backing from Trevorton Holdings, he began scouting supplies, from tools to car lifts. He collaborated with architects to finalize the layout, ensuring the space would be safe, functional, and welcoming. Jennifer entrusted him with autonomy, valuing his expertise, and he threw himself into the project wholeheartedly. Mia squealed in delight when Dean told her about his new job. She proudly announced at school that her daddy was going to teach people about cars, painting her own interpretation of Daddy's garage in bright crayons. For once, the future glimmered with hope. Meanwhile, curiosity about Jennifer intensified. Town reporters requested interviews, but she politely declined most, preferring to let her actions speak. One day, Dean found himself flipping through a local newspaper, only to spot a headline: "Mysterious benefactor shakes up. Riverdale, meet Jennifer Robinson of Trevorton Holdings." The article offered limited information, just a summary of her philanthropic efforts and a vague reference to her wealth. However, Dean discovered a side note about a tragedy in Jennifer's past, something about losing a child years ago in a freak accident. The article lacked specifics, but the mention was enough to make Dean's breath catch. He remembered the sorrow in her eyes whenever she spent time with Mia. Could that be why she was so protective of his daughter? That evening, Dean mustered the courage to ask her directly. They were at the workshop site late, finishing up some design tweaks with the foreman. Once the workers left and the dim overhead bulbs buzzed in the empty space, Dean turned to Jennifer, voice low. "I saw an article," he began, "careful about a tragedy. I just wanted you to know you don't have to talk about it. But if you ever need someone to listen." Jennifer's eyes flickered with pain. She exhaled a shaky breath. "I lost my son in an accident 8 years ago. He was only 4. His name was David." Her voice broke on the name. "It was a car accident. We were living in Chicago at the time. A drunk driver ran a red light." Dean felt a rush of empathy. Her hidden layers made sense now, why she was so kind to Mia, her desire to help children, her philanthropic focus. She had channeled her grief into building a corporate empire. Trevorton Holdings wasn't just a business. It was her means of shaping a better world. Dean placed a tentative hand on her shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. The raw vulnerability in her gaze softened. For a moment, the two of them stood in silent mutual understanding. Both had lost someone dear in a car accident. Both carried the weight of that grief daily. "When I see Mia," Jennifer said, voice trembling, "I see so much life and hope. It reminds me of what David might have been like if—" She trailed off, wiping away an errant tear. Dean squeezed her shoulder gently. There was no need for more words. The moment was enough to foster a deeper bond between them. Any lingering doubts about Jennifer's motives dissolved. She was not a patronizing billionaire, pitying a poor single dad. She was a broken soul, trying to mend herself by helping others. In the subsequent days, their friendship, if one could call it that, intensified. A quiet camaraderie formed, built on mutual grief and hope. And as the workshop's opening day loomed, Jennifer's presence in the community became more pronounced. People noticed her compassion, her willingness to invest not just money but time. Even the local skeptics thawed, acknowledging her genuine concern for Riverdale's future. What no one realized yet was the magnitude of Jennifer's wealth, the billion-dollar empire behind her. She kept those details under wraps, preferring to operate with humility. Only Marshall Smith, her chief legal officer, understood the vastness of her holdings. And even he didn't fully grasp the personal stake Jennifer had in this small Texan town, or in the lives of Dean and Mia Thompson. At last, the grand opening of the Riverdale Community Workshop arrived. The building stood proudly in its final form, a sleek, modern structure with large glass windows, well-equipped workstations, and a welcoming foyer with motivational posters. The entire town turned out for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, buzzing with excitement. A sense of renewal swept over Riverdale. Jennifer stood beside the mayor and a few city officials. Dean hovered near the entrance, sweaty, palmed with anticipation. As soon as the ceremonial ribbon was cut, the crowd surged inside, admiring the space that, only weeks ago, had been an empty skeleton of steel beams. Teens, adults, and even some seniors eyed the state of the art equipment with awe. Mia beamed as she held Dean's hand, bursting with pride. "Daddy, this is your place," she exclaimed. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Dean welcomed the visitors, guiding them through the workshop, explaining plans for classes and open sessions where anyone could learn basic vehicle maintenance or advanced restoration techniques. While local journalists snapped photos, Jennifer politely addressed their questions. A reporter asked, "Why Riverdale? Why invest so much in such a small town?" Jennifer smiled. "Because every community deserves a chance to thrive, no matter its size. And sometimes the best opportunities blossom in unexpected places." In the midst of the celebration, Bill Gates, yes, the Bill Gates made a discreet appearance. He had collaborated with Trevorton Holdings on philanthropic initiatives before, and Jennifer had invited him to see her latest project. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that really Bill Gates?" People craned their necks, starstruck. Dean recognized him from news coverage, but was too stunned to approach. Gates shook hands with Jennifer, commending her for another impactful community project. Dean realized then that Jennifer's sphere of influence stretched far beyond what he had imagined. She was in league with some of the world's most prominent philanthropists, forging alliances to bring resources to underserved areas. Yet, she'd kept it quiet, no headlines, no big announcements. Her humility left him even more in awe. As Bill Gates departed, a hush of amazement lingered. Dean found himself alone with Jennifer momentarily. "You really are something else," he managed, still stunned by her connections. Jennifer just shrugged lightly. "It's not about fame, Dean. It's about doing what's right." That phrase echoed in Dean's mind throughout the day. The workshop's opening was a hit, with many signing up for classes. Dean's new position promised a stable income and fresh purpose. The day ended with applause, congratulatory hugs, and tears of joy. Jennifer stood off to the side, a pleased yet subdued expression on her face, as though she were a stage director watching her actors claim their standing ovation. Dean noticed her slipping away quietly, weaving through the crowd. He caught up to her in the parking lot, near the Mustang she'd had towed in just for the event. Even though she now traveled mostly in black sedans or SUVs for business, the classic Mustang had become emblematic of her unassuming self, who she was when all the corporate trappings were stripped away. "Leaving already?" he asked gently. She nodded, glancing at the horizon. The sky was a magnificent blend of orange and purple. "I have a meeting out of state tomorrow, but I'll be back soon. This is your show now, Dean. I'm so proud of you." Before he could respond, she surprised him by wrapping him in a brief, heartfelt hug. Dean's breath caught, warmth flooding him. When she pulled away, there were tears shining in her eyes. "Take care of Mia," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. Then she climbed into the Mustang and was gone, taillights receding into the twilight. The following weeks were some of the busiest and happiest Dean had ever known. With Jennifer temporarily out of town, he threw himself into teaching. Every morning he'd drop Mia at school, then race to the workshop, unlocking the doors to a line of eager locals waiting to learn. Teenagers who once roamed the streets aimlessly were now learning how to change oil, replace brake pads, and rebuild engines. A sense of pride filled Dean whenever he saw the spark of confidence in their eyes. Mia thrived as well. Now that Dean had a stable salary, he was able to move them into a modest but cozier rented house. The new place had functioning heat, a small backyard, and a bedroom for Mia that wasn't drafty. Life still had its challenges, but the daily stress of making ends meet had eased. Jennifer and Dean stayed in contact via phone calls and texts. She sent him updates on future expansions, teased him about the next classic car she might find for them to restore together. Late one evening, she revealed with shy excitement that Bill Gates had extended an offer to partner on a series of vocational training centers across the country, using Riverdale's model as a blueprint. Dean was simultaneously flattered and stunned. He joked that he was no expert in scaling philanthropic ventures, but Jennifer assured him she'd handle the business side. However, not everything was rosy. Several real estate developers, hearing of Riverdale's newfound attention, swooped in with proposals for high-end condos and resorts. Fear spread among long-time residents that these outsiders would gentrify the town, hiking up prices and displacing families. Jennifer's name was sometimes tossed into the rumor. Mill people wondered if she was complicit or if she'd defend the community. One evening, Dean received alarming news. The mayor was considering selling off public land near the river to a developer who planned a luxury hotel. It could threaten the fragile ecosystem and overshadow local businesses. Furious, Dean stormed into the mayor's office, demanding to know if he'd consulted Jennifer, who had a vested interest in the community's well-being. The mayor shrugged, his tone defensive. "Miss Robinson isn't a town official, Dean. She's a philanthropist and an investor. Yes, but this is municipal land. The final decision rests with the council." Dean left, unsettled. He couldn't reach Jennifer. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Suddenly, the feeling of helplessness that once dogged his life returned. He didn't have the power to halt these big money deals on his own. Late that night, as he browsed news articles online, he found a press release from Trevorton Holdings. Jennifer Robinson had brokered a deal to purchase significant shares in multiple green tech startups and real estate trusts. The amounts involved were staggering, hinting that her wealth was on a scale Riverdale could scarcely comprehend. He tried not to panic. Jennifer had promised to protect Riverdale. Yet here he was, reading about massive expansions and deals that didn't seem to align with the town's best interests. Could she have changed her mind? Was she playing a larger game that even he couldn't fathom? The following day, the tension escalated. The developer who intended to build the hotel arrived in Riverdale holding a press conference. He was a brash man named Ronald Pierce, well known for turning small towns into luxury destinations for wealthy tourists. Pierce boasted of job creation and modernization. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I'm thrilled to work with Treverton Holdings on this venture," he declared. Showing off documents supposedly proving a partnership, Dean felt betrayal coil in his stomach. Was Jennifer siding with a profiteer? The crowd murmured in confusion, and local reporters scrambled for clarity. The workshop attendees, who respected Jennifer, looked to Dean for answers. "What's going on?" they demanded. He had none. Conflicted, Dean walked away from the chaos. In that moment, he needed to find Jennifer. He needed answers before the entire town turned against her, or worse, lost trust in her philanthropic work. If she truly was in league with Ronald Pierce, then everything might unravel. That evening, Dean tried calling Jennifer again. This time, she answered, though her voice sounded weary. He wasted no time, explaining the panic in Riverdale. When he mentioned Ronald Pierce's name, he heard her sharp intake of breath. "Dean, please, you have to trust me," she said. "Pierce is lying. Treverton Holdings has no intention of partnering with him on any destructive project. I've been in back-to-back negotiations to protect that land from developers. I've been trying to close a different deal that will allow me to buy out the municipal debt, so the council won't need Pierce's investment at all." Relief washed over Dean. "But why hasn't the town heard this? People are scared." "I know," she replied, voice thick with frustration. "I can't reveal details of the negotiations until the contracts are signed, or I risk jeopardizing the entire deal. I'm flying back tonight to straighten this out. Just hold on." True to her word, Jennifer arrived in Riverdale the next morning. She immediately called a town hall meeting, inviting everyone to hear her statement. The place was packed, standing room only. Angry murmurs filled the air. Pierce was there too, looking smug. Jennifer stepped up to the microphone, her posture calm, yet eyes blazing with resolve. "There have been rumors that Treverton Holdings supports a luxury development on public land. This is categorically false." She glanced directly at Pierce. "Mr. Pierce's claims are unfounded. In fact, Treverton Holdings has been in the final stages of negotiations to purchase the municipal debt, effectively removing any need for outside developers." Pierce stepped forward, brandishing documents. "That's not what these say," he sneered. "I have signatures." Jennifer cut him off, producing a stack of papers of her own. "What you have," she said icily, "is a partial contract for a development in a different county, from which Treverton Holdings withdrew months ago, citing environmental concerns. You are illegally misrepresenting my corporation's stance." A ripple of shock and indignation spread through the crowd. Pierce turned red, stammering. Jennifer laid out the facts. Her plan was to keep the river land public, incorporate a nature preserve, and create a modest eco-tourism space run by locals, ensuring minimal environmental impact and maximum community benefit. She invited the town council to finalize the arrangement later that day. Applause broke out, thunderous and grateful. Pierce stormed out, cursing under his breath. Jennifer stood, shoulders shaking slightly from relief. Dean, in the audience, felt a surge of pride and admiration. This was the woman he'd grown to trust, who concealed staggering power behind her compassionate heart. After the meeting, Jennifer was mobbed by relieved citizens, shaking her hand and offering thanks. As the crowd thinned, Dean approached her. She offered him a smile, weary but genuine. "I told you to trust me," she said softly. He nodded. "I'm sorry I doubted you, even for a second." She placed a hand on his cheek, a brief, tender gesture. "You had every right to worry. I wish I could have told you sooner." With the tension resolved, life in Riverdale settled again, but something had changed in Dean's heart. He realized how deeply he cared for Jennifer, not because she was wealthy or powerful, but because she was kind, determined, and vulnerable. She, too, seemed unable to hide the fondness in her eyes whenever she looked at him. Yet both treaded carefully around that unspoken possibility. She was a billionaire with global responsibilities. He was a small-town single dad trying to piece his life together. The gap between their worlds felt vast, even with all the closeness they'd forged. As the year drew to a close, Riverdale transformed. New jobs sprouted from the community center's success. Local businesses thrived, and the workshop became a beacon of opportunity for youths and adults alike. Dean was a local hero, often featured in small news segments as the man who taught the town to fix more than just cars. He taught them to fix their outlook on life. Through it all, Jennifer moved between her worlds. High-stakes corporate meetings with global figures like Bill Gates, and intimate dinners with Dean and Mia, where they laughed over homemade spaghetti and recounted the day's adventures. Her empire was enormous. It spanned continents, diverse industries, and philanthropic fronts. But in the quiet corners of her heart, she found solace in Riverdale, in Dean's humble warmth, and Mia's childlike wonder. One crisp December afternoon, after finishing a workshop class, Dean found Jennifer in his office, gazing at a photo he kept of himself and Mia from her kindergarten graduation. Jennifer held a large folder, wearing a gentle smile. "I have a proposal," she said, handing him the folder. Dean flipped it open to see a series of documents bearing Trevorton Holdings' letterhead. It detailed an investment scheme to expand the automotive workshop concept to neighboring counties, awarding Dean partial ownership of the entire chain of training centers. The projected figures were staggering. Dean felt dizzy. This is a life-changing amount," he stammered. "It would not only secure Mia's future, but also help countless people learn valuable skills. But it also implied traveling, coordinating, stepping out of the cozy boundaries of Riverdale." Jennifer bit her lip. "You deserve this, Dean. You've shown what's possible here. We can replicate it elsewhere, and you'd be at the helm." His heart pounded. He was equal parts exhilarated and terrified. "But I'm just a mechanic from Riverdale," he whispered. "You're more than that," Jennifer insisted, her voice firm. "You have a heart for people, an eye for detail, and the passion to make real change. That's what matters." They paused, the air thick with unspoken feelings. At last, Dean gently placed the folder down. "I want this, Jennifer. For me, for Mia, for everyone who needs it. But I also want to know where we stand." He hesitated, then continued more softly. "You and me." Tears glimmered in her eyes, a mix of hope and apprehension. She placed her hand over his. "Dean, I didn't come to Riverdale looking for love, but sometimes the best things in life happen when we're not looking." Their lips met in a tender kiss, an overdue acknowledgement of the bond they shared. In that moment, all the fears about their differences melted away. There was only the warmth of a battered soul and a guarded heart finding solace in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Jennifer let out a trembling laugh. "We'll have challenges," she warned. "The media, the distance, my corporate obligations. But we'll figure it out together." Dean nodded, smiling. "We will." Outside, snow began to fall, an unusual, almost miraculous sight for Riverdale. Mia burst into the office, squealing with delight at the flurries outside. Jennifer and Dean exchanged a conspiratorial grin. They stepped out into the swirling white flakes, Mia dancing between them, arms raised to the sky. No one could have predicted that the man who once patched radiators for spare change would end up side by side with a billionaire philanthropist, forging a future that transcended their past losses. Yet here they stood, forging new memories in the gentle hush of a snowy Texas afternoon. And so began the next chapter of their story, a testament to the power of kindness, the resilience of hope, and the unpredictable, transformative magic that occurs when two unlikely paths intersect. As the snow drifted over Riverdale, Dean and Jennifer stood united, forging a life that defied all expectations. Their journey from a lonely roadside encounter with a broken Mustang to the bright future they built proves that empathy and perseverance can rewrite destinies. Dean's struggles as a single dad found resolution in Jennifer's compassion, while her veiled grief found healing in Dean's steadfast heart. Their story reminds us that a simple act of kindness can change our lives in unimaginable ways. We never know who we're really helping, or how that stranger might just be the key to our own second chance. If you found inspiration in this real-life drama fiction, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support ensures we can continue bringing stories that ignite hope, warm the heart, and remind us all that miracles can happen.